Imagine a night that was supposed to be like any other, but instead it took a turn into the realm of the unexplainable. Meet Edward and Tracy, a couple quite like you and me. With one exception. They are known for their occasional dalliances with recreational drugs, yet on this particular night, they chose the path of sobriety, a decision that would lead them into a night they would never forget. The evening was filled with laughter and joy, the party in full swing. Edward and Tracy, relishing the atmosphere, were the life of the party. As the night drew to a close, they decided to take the long walk home, a decision fueled by their love for the quiet, dark streets that had always been a sanctuary for their late-night talks. As they strolled through the hushed lanes, their conversations flowed like a gentle stream, unhindered and free. The night was calm, the moon high up in the sky, casting long shadows that danced on the pavements. A glance at the clock revealed it was 10:45. The walk home, they knew, would be no more than a quarter of an hour. Yet, as they continued their journey, engrossed in their talks, something peculiar happened. The next time they looked at the clock, it read 1:20 in the morning. The 15-minute walk had turned into hours. They were still on the same path, yet the time had inexplicably slipped away. Where had all those hours gone? Confusion turned to disbelief, then to fear. The couple stood there in the middle of the street under the pale moonlight, their minds racing to find an explanation for the lost hours. The quiet night suddenly seemed ominous, the silence deafening. The familiar streets no longer felt like home, but a labyrinth where time held no meaning. But what happened next was something that defied all laws of time. Time, as we know it, follows a linear path. But what if it didn't? Picture Edward and Tracy, a couple used to the regular rhythm of life. They relish in the quietude of an evening stroll home, expecting no more than a quick 15-minute walk. Little did they know that this night their perception of time was about to be shattered. As they ambled through the familiar streets, engaged in their usual banter, they glanced at their wristwatch. 10:45 it read, a glance that would soon become a gaze of disbelief. For when they looked again, the hands of the clock had inexplicably jumped. It was 1:20 in the morning. The houses they once knew, the roads they've traveled, even the vehicles that sporadically passed by had all transformed into echoes of a bygone era. Their once vibrant neighborhood now appeared dilapidated, almost abandoned. The houses, once beacons of modern architecture, now bore the marks of time, with their paint peeling and walls crumbling. The roads, once paved and smooth, were now rough dirt paths. The cars, once symbols of the 21st century, now looked like relics from the 50s. A wave of unease washed over them. They were walking on the same roads, or so it seemed, but everything was different. They were lost, not in space, but in time. The world around them had regressed, but they remained the same. The tick-tock of their wristwatch became a haunting reminder of the time they had lost. In a frenzy, they ran towards their home, hoping to find something familiar, something unchanged. But their home too had succumbed to the ravages of time. It stood there, deteriorated and unlivable. It was as if they had stepped back into the past, but everything had aged along with them. The world around them had changed, but the question remained: had they traveled back in time, or was this some twisted version of their reality? The mystery of their lost time was just beginning. The answers were elusive, yet Edward and Tracy were determined to unravel the truth. Their journey through time, however unintended, had just begun. When thrust into a world unknown, survival becomes the only instinct. Picture this: Edward and Tracy standing in the shell of their once familiar home. The wallpaper, once of vibrant hue, now faded and peeling. The furniture, once a symbol of comfort, now unrecognizable and decrepit. But this was their shelter, their only haven in this strange, timeless world. As the sun rose, casting long, eerie shadows over the dilapidated landscape, the reality of their situation began to set in. Food was a pressing concern. The old refrigerator yielded some provisions, still edible but alarmingly scarce. With each passing day, the pangs of hunger grew more insistent, gnawing at their resolve. They were city folk, unaccustomed to fending for themselves in such primal ways. But the will to survive is a potent force, prompting ordinary people to do extraordinary things. For Edward and Tracy, this meant learning to scavenge. It meant venturing into the eerily silent neighborhood, where the only sound was the distant echo of their footsteps and the rustling of leaves underfoot. The nearest store, once bustling with activity, now stood abandoned. The door creaked open to reveal dusty shelves and a few cans of food, outdated yet edible. a small victory in their fight for survival. But as the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, even these meager supplies dwindled. Desperation drove them to the unthinkable: hunting. The neighborhood was teeming with rabbits, a plentiful source of sustenance if one was brave enough to catch them. And so, they adapted once again. Edward, the city slicker, became Edward, the hunter. Tracy, once a social butterfly, became Tracy, the gatherer. The landscape of their life had changed dramatically. No longer were they Edward and Tracy, the fun-loving couple from the city. They were survivors, carving out an existence in a world that had seemingly forgotten them. Their days were consumed with the basics of survival: food, shelter, warmth. Their nights filled with the haunting question, would they ever escape this timeless world? Time seemed to stretch into eternity as the couple grappled with their new reality. Time, it seems, has a cruel sense of humor. In the empty echo of years, Edward and Tracy found themselves the only humans in a world that seemed to have stopped in time, yet aged relentlessly. They lived, they survived, they endured. Yet time, that intangible, relentless force, had a different plan. The years slipped by like sand through fingers, and one day Tracy was no more. Her laughter, her warmth, her presence, reduced to a mere echo in Edward's memory. The isolation, once bearable with her by his side, now seemed to consume him. Now, he was truly alone, a solitary figure in a world that was not his own. Yet, he held on. He held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he could find a way back to his time, a way back to when the world made sense, when time flowed as it should. Stuck in a time that was not his, Edward was left alone, hoping for a miracle, for a way back to his time.